Hey guys, we're in the studio for May 2025, coming to you with a market recap, capturing both Canada, US domestic, cross-border, talking about different segments and equipment types throughout North America. So let's talk about the Canadian domestic marketplace and the different equipment segments like dry van, reefer, and flatbed. So in the dry van space, we have seen rates and capacity remain relatively stable when we compare it to April. Rates have risen slightly, around 1.8%. Load to truck ratios around 7. The LTL space of dry van is very stagnant and flat. When we tie that into the reefer side, we've seen a lot of similarities. 1.5% increases. Load to truck ratios are significantly higher. Capacity is a little bit more challenged in the reefer space, particularly in Ontario and BC areas, and Quebec areas as well, where produce season is underway. The LTL reefer segment has had a shortage of capacity just due to it's such a niche marketplace. The one thing I think you need to all know is early booking is probably the best way to curb yourself and protect yourself to ensure capacity in the reefer space. And then in flatbed, again, rates are very steady, very flat. And it's only being supported by areas like Alberta and Ontario. Volumes are up in the flatbed space year over year, but month over month, we haven't seen much movement. LTL flatbed, a space that continues to be very niche, but an ever-growing segment in the flatbed space. So what are some key takeaways for a lot of you shippers focused on the Canadian domestic marketplace? First, Road Check Week took place between May 13th and the 15th. It did cause some tightened capacity. Future disruptions can occur in this space, and I think it's something that we all need to be cognizant about moving forward. Rail disruptions also continue to shift freight toward the over-the-road marketplace, especially because the over-the-road marketplace is pretty down in terms of the price points. Tightening of reefer capacity has occurred in Ontario and Quebec, and it's something that will continue to persist throughout the summer months. And dry van rates are nudging upwards slightly. The one thing I would recommend, lock in rates now, avoid any potential summer and holiday spikes, and I think we can have a good, prosperous 2025. Let's now talk about the cross-border marketplace, northbound and southbound shipments coming to and from Canada and the United States. So in the dry van space, cross-border full truckload volumes are very stable, with rates holding around $220 a mile, especially going southbound. Southbound is the softest marketplace. There's a ton of capacity at the moment. Northbound, we've seen slight increases though. 6% increases going north into Canada. Load to truck ratios, again, just slightly over 7 in the dry van space. Tariffs have drastically affected the cross-border marketplace, and it's ever changing. It's a relatively soft marketplace, and there's areas where you have some capacity concerns going northbound. Now, when we look into the reefer side of things, it's very stable, just slightly elevated rates. Northbound being tighter, southbound being soft. Load to truck ratios, again, around 7, 7.5. And LTL reefer is also an area that continues to have challenges, especially with a growing produce marketplace at the moment. Now, in the flatbed side, I think this is where we've seen probably the toughest challenge. Northbound rates are up 1.5%. On average in the month of May, I think rates hover around 3.45 cents a mile. Rejection rates remain high, signaling some capacity tightness. And tying that into the LTL flatbed space, you're starting to see more and more people find solutions for their smaller style shipments, especially when they just need product and want to avoid tariffs. So what are some key takeaways for a lot of you shippers focused on the cross-border marketplace? Obviously, there's some northbound capacity tightness, a slight increase in terms of rates. There's southbound capacity availability and a stabilization in terms of rates. I think we've reached a relative floor. The flatbed and reefer space pose a little bit more challenges, reefer being produce season, flatbed being construction and building season coming into the summer months. The one thing we all have to be aware about is the growing and ever-changing dynamics with tariffs. First week of June, we've experienced an increase in steel and aluminum tariffs. This can ever change the dynamics of each equipment type and each segment in specific areas. So continue to stay in touch with what's going on, and I think that's the best way for us to handle it. Lastly, let's talk about the US domestic marketplace, both dry van, reefer, and flatbed. So in the dry van space, rates are relatively steady. They are very similar to what it was in April, although we have experienced 11.6% increase year over year. Load to truck ratios are much more favorable in the States in comparison to Canada at 4.89. Demand is solid in areas like California and Texas, and LTL dry van rates are flat but face upward pressure in terms of volume. Carriers are very selective in certain areas, and it's hovering near an equilibrium. Now, going into the reefer side, again, things are very, very similar. Slight uptick in terms of pricing, but in terms of month over month change, not much. Load to truck ratios hover around 7. And in the LTL reefer space, it's obviously a very, very niche marketplace and is very, very challenging at times, especially as a growing produce season evolves. Now, lastly, going into the flatbed side, this is the one area where there has been some changes. Rates are up roughly 2%, but they do face strong construction demand in the Southeast and Midwest. Load to truck ratios are shockingly almost 40, or slightly above 40, highest in the country. So as building materials start to evolve and continuing to push the construction season along, I think you may face some challenges in the specific area. So what are some key takeaways for a lot of you shippers focused on the US domestic marketplace? Well, flatbed demand is at an all-time high. It's surging, actually. While dry van and reefer remains relatively flat and stable, the one thing I would recommend is, again, look to lock in rates now to avoid any potential increases throughout the summer and holiday months. With everything that's currently going on in the market, ISG is committed to dedicating resources to your business and hopefully becoming an integral part of what you do day to day. Our team leverages real-time market insights, tracking and tracing, while providing a unique driver network. Let us tailor a solution to optimize your full truckload and LTL shipments, whether it's US domestic, Canadian domestic, or cross-border. Contact ship@isgtransport.com today. Hey guys, we're in the studio for